All right. Hello, 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 hello. How's everyone doing today? It is my pleasure to have you for another episode of Perspectives with Black Men. Today, we have Gio Santiago on today, and I'm really excited to have a discussion as we talk about Black Lives Matter, as well as what that really means, and also have a critical discussion about voices that we often leave out of that discussion, as well as perspectives of Black men, a voice that we typically leave out. So, as you know, this is a show about perspectives with Black men. We feature our voices, our experiences, and our solutions. And as you also know, I am pretty particular about inclusion and also making sure that we do the best that we can to lift up all voices, especially those that are marginalized and minoritized. And so I'm really excited to have someone who is a leader in our community on this issue to come on the show and have a conversation and talk about his experience. And so Gio Santiago, I really am excited to have you on. If you can join us today on video, he works at Equality Ohio, and I met him, which apparently it was 3 or 4 years ago now, and I thought it was just last year. So, we were on a panel together, and so Gio, welcome to Perspectives with Black Men.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, no problem. So if you could just tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and we'll get started after that.
Well, my name is Giovanni Santiago. I use he, him, his pronouns. I am the Northeast Ohio Regional Organizer with Equality Ohio, but I am also the founder and CEO of Meta Center, Inc. It stands for Motivate, Educate, Transform, and Advocate. It is a youth center that I started 4 years ago geared towards assisting transgender and gender nonconforming youth. Primarily based in Akron, Ohio, but I do a lot of work all across the country and some work with some partners that I have in Canada. And I just love to assist people on their journeys in life, whether it is someone who is transitioning or just someone who needs that extra help with realizing that they are marginalized and understanding what that means. I am also a huge sneaker collector. So if you know me, you have met me in person, you'll see I have the dopest kicks ever. Last time I did a count, it was a little over 700 plus pairs. So it's a real thing. That's me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You say it's a real thing. That is really awesome. So talk to us a little bit about this criticism that we typically hear in society, specifically about trans Black men voices not being one that should be included in the conversation, or when we talk about the attack against Black men specifically. Talk to us about the criticism that you hear, and how do you respond? You know, I look to you as a leader in this issue, so talk to me. How should I respond? Because clearly I have you on the show, so I don't have that view. But how would we respond to some of that criticism?
It's interesting because a lot of people talk about this topic and it's just mulled over so much, and no one understands that at the end of the day, first and foremost, I'm Black. So I have to deal with that, whether it's in a Black-led movement or a Black-centered movement or centering Black people. That is my first thing. And then I always tell people when they meet me, or whether you know me or not, like, I am a Black man. no one who has ever met me for the first time has ever really thought that I was trans. That's not something that people say. They're not like, oh, I'm unsure. So having us in the conversation is so vital and so important because we are also targets. We are targeted as Black men, especially those of us who live as stealth, as we call it. So with people not knowing our transness, we are high targets, and especially those of us that are young Black men. So I always tell people that's the life that I live. So I have to be included in the conversation because I am directly in the movement. I live this life every single day, and I'm advocating for the movement and for my life to be safe. So to not include me is a misstep on those individuals' parts, and it's disrespectful and demeaning and dehumanizing. So that is what I say to people. When you see me, if you don't know me, am I a Black man? And if your answer is yes, then that's the end of the conversation.
Wow. That's the end of the conversation then. But I appreciate that perspective as well because, um, when police stop us and the experiences that Black men have, and we see the attack on individuals, you know, even people tell me sometimes, oh, you have a doctorate degree, or you are educated, or oh, you have that type of job, so you shouldn't have the same worries as other people. And I'm like, well, the police don't know that. Or if I'm in this part of town, or this state, they don't care about that. They see a Black man, and before I can even have a conversation, if you're beating me, you don't even know, like, because the things that you see that happen, they happen without a lot of conversation. It's like you get pulled over, step out the car, pull you out the car, things happening. It's not really time for a conversation and discourse about what it means to be a Black man and what it means to be educated and what type of job you have or what have you. So I see that as being the same thing is when you when you have when you're have the appearance and you show up as a Black man, it doesn't matter how you got there. Um, you're treated as such. You're treated as such.
Exactly. And that's the conversation. Like I said, it's always something that I bring up. I'm like, it does not even allow me a chance to have a conversation with a police officer if that happened, or another individual. But why? Like, why should that be someone else's first thought? My transness. You see me, so you know what I look like, and that is the same view that the cops are going to see. And just as you said, the education pieces, the life experience, those things don't matter because those conversations are not being had with the police. And I talk about that. Like, if I was murdered in the streets, and if the conversation is being had about who I am, is it just going to be another young Black man that is murdered in the streets? Or is it going to be that Black man with 4 degrees, or that Black man who was an honorably disabled veteran, or that Black man who started his own nonprofit? It's not going to be all of that conversation. It's just going to be the fact that I was a young Black man murdered. And so that is what I try to keep on the forefront of people's mind. I know when I look in the mirror every day that I'm a Black man, and people can have whatever feelings they want around transness and transgender individuals, but that does not negate the fact that I am standing in this skin every single day, and my appearance is what it is. And if anything, it compounds the struggles that I've had because I've seen it on both sides of the coin. And so I use that as the perspective that I have, and when I'm explaining these things to individuals, because people don't see it that way. They have tunnel vision, so they only see what they want to see, and they're only going to see what you show them. So I'm going to show you why it's important for me to be in this conversation. So
Right. And actually, let's show people now. You are a leader in Black trans leadership, really, and bringing issues to the forefront, advocating for people's rights. And so, can you talk to us about why, I won't say why, but what is the importance of Black trans leadership, and what does that even mean?
Man, it's such a loaded question. It means really giving credit where it's due, first and foremost, but also just not negating people's experiences. And that doesn't even mean you have to validate it, because you might not care about it, so you don't want to validate it, but you don't want to be dismissive of it also. So Black trans leadership is me. It is Monica Roberts. It is, you know, so many people who have laid their lives on the line for this work, and for liberation of transgender individuals, and not only just from white supremacy or white culture, but within Black culture also, because we know that Black trans women are the highest rate of individuals that are murdered, and more often than not at the hands of Black cisgender men. So Black trans leadership is standing up and talking about that, and having the wherewithal to have these conversations with people who need to hear that, and being able to have that seat at the table. And when you have that seat at the table, you bring more chairs. That's what Black trans leadership is. It is being that person who other individuals who are not marginalized see as someone who is worthy of having these conversations with. So we're there, and we're bringing the rest of us with us, because there are a lot of people who are Black and trans, and they feel like they're leaders, but they are not bringing everyone else along on the journey. And so that's not leadership. That is one individual doing what they feel like is the work, and I feel like leadership is modeling that behavior. I live this life and I do these things because I want to show that as a Black trans person or a brown trans person, you can be successful. You can have people respect you. You can get degrees. You can live a life that you feel like is not in a box. And so that is what it means. It means showing up even when you feel like your way has already been paved. I have done this work for so many years, and I tell people I do this work so the youth and young adults, or even older adults, don't have to struggle. I've never been a person who had to worry about whether I was going to be homeless because my parents were going to kick me out, or I wasn't going to know where my next meal was going to come from because I didn't have a job. Those things have never affected my life. And so I want to ensure that it affects less people. So that is what being a leader is. It has nothing to do with me anymore. It has everything to do with the people. And Black trans leadership is important because we have to be visible. We have to be visible to know, for the youth to know that there's somebody else out there who looks like you, who's doing this work. I did not have a Black trans leader growing up. I didn't know anyone that I could say, man, that person has gone through their transition and they have made it. They're at the top. I didn't have that. So I have to be that, and others have to be that. And that's why it's so important for us to be visible and authentic in our lives, and authentic in the work that we're doing, and able to be respected.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Respect is really important. And that is something that I don't think everyone understands. And with respect, in my opinion, comes dignity. I mean, you have to value the person's dignity as a human being to truly respect them. You don't have to agree with someone or want to be someone to be able to respect them and to value the fact that they deserve dignity. I'm a firm believer in that. And so let's go to the question that I said I was going to ask last, but I'm asking now. Um, you just kind of made me think about this being important to ask right now. But when you think about the Black Lives Matter movement and the fact that there are some who support the movement but exclude certain individuals. So, for example, there's some who say Black Lives Matter, but not all those gay folks, or Black Lives Matter, but I ain't really with that trans stuff. Black Lives Matter, but those disabled people, they can handle things on their own. Um, Give me my rights as it affects me, not necessarily Black Lives Matter, meaning all Black Lives Matter. So, can you talk to us about why is it important as we fight for justice and not equality, but equity, racial equity in this country? Why is it important that all parts of blackness is celebrated and stand united against bigotry and hatred?
Well, first and foremost is to combat ignorance. Ignorance within our own families and communities and culture. That's the first thing that we have to talk about. But I think it's important because all of the individuals that you named, Black LGBTQ people, Black trans people, Black disabled people, are all on the front lines fighting the fight also. As I said before, if I am at a Black Lives Matter rally, I just look like another Black man. So they don't know that I'm Black and trans. And so with putting that barrier, you are excluding people who are valuable to the movement. But not only that, you are taking away someone's power. You are taking away the power for people to self-advocate. And I had a conversation a couple weeks ago. I sat on a panel with amazing Black women and a Black trans woman, Aria Saeed, and a Black disabled woman, Miss Tati Lee, who both were, bringing these things to light also. And that was something that Miss Tati Lee said, you are taking away someone's rights to fight for their own rights. You are excluding a population of people whose voices are already not being heard. And so you are doing exactly what we are fighting against. You are being an oppressor also. And so that's not okay. First off, it's not okay because once again, it dehumanizes people. And it's almost like saying, well, it's not your turn again. Well, it's not your turn again. But it has to be. It has to all be on the same turn because it's about equity. And my life does not stop because I'm trans. As I said, I am Black first. So whether you're Black in whatever else is your intersectionality, that being Black is what people are going to see first. Now, obviously, if you're in a wheelchair, they can see that you're visibly disabled, but it does not matter because you are Black and disabled. And so when we have these conversations and people say, well, I'm not with this or I'm not with that, that is almost to me like saying, well, only Black educated people are matter. So if you're Black and on welfare, it doesn't matter. If you're Black and a felon, it doesn't matter. If you're Black and you're under the age of X, Y, and Z, no, it doesn't matter. It's not your turn. And so it just sounds stupid, honestly. And that's the easiest way to put it. It just sounds ignorant and stupid. And we have to be a cohesive unit. And it's not even necessarily like we have to be cohesive to take down the white man. We have to be cohesive so we can uplift each other because we can all get to the top. It's enough space at the top that we can all get there. And so if we are not pulling each other up and we're stepping on each other, then you're really not getting to the top because when you think about it, when you step down on someone, you're sliding down a step anyway. And now you got to try to pull yourself back up. So you're working harder essentially. So if we embrace everyone who's in the community, and by the community, I mean the Black community, if we are pulling all of our strengths together, it only makes us stronger. And we need all of the wisdom. So we're going to need to know from all of these different pockets of people why their life matters and why it matters for the whole collective.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we are getting to the point where we are going to turn it over to the audience for questions. I do see two questions that we're going to ask. Actually, there's three questions in the back. I mean, in the back. Wow. In online, I want to actually shout out one of my college classmates, Jules, for her great questions out there. I'm glad you were able to finally watch. But if you have questions, put them in the comment section. We're coming to the end. And so with that, the final question that we have prepared that I want to talk to you about is about allyship. And so, Can you talk to us about what allies should do and how they can assist Black trans leaders to move forward in this movement?
You know, my thoughts have shifted with this question since all of these things have transpired in the world. And I feel like uh, Black individuals in general have been being pulled on more for knowledge. So I used to say, oh, education, have these conversations with us, talk to us. That was always my first go-to as a prior teacher and an educator. That is always like my cornerstone, education. But right now, money, that is the thing. Donate to Black trans leadership. Pay Black trans leaders when you have us speaking, have us talking somewhere. Pay people for their labor. So that is a fabulous form of allyship, because everyone can't be on the ground and everyone can't be the person who is hosting an event or doing this, but write a check. That works to help further the movement, and people are appreciative of that. Especially as, like I said, myself, I run a small nonprofit. Every penny, it counts and it helps. So allies can donate, but also having the tough conversations with your own people. That's allyship. So if you are a white person and you know that you are in an all lives matter family, but you're not an all lives matter person, have those conversations. And even if it comes with a little bit of resistance, because at least you know you tried and you are standing by your word and you're doing the hard work. Also, education as far as having Black trans leaders come speak to your classes, whether it's at a high school or at a university, or holding a workshop at work if you have that type of work environment where you can bring speakers in. Those things matter, because it always is easier to be dismissive of someone if you don't put a face with it. But once you see a person, it's a little bit harder to say that that person's life doesn't matter, or that their story is not valid. So really supporting and uplifting Black trans leaders is a great form of allyship. So donating, having those hard conversations, and supporting and uplifting. Step up, step back. So if you know you're in a space where you're not the best person to be in that space, pull a Black leader or a Black trans leader in, and yes, let them speak for their own experiences. Don't talk over us. Don't be the person, whether you're Black or white, telling about my story and my experience. Let me do that. Bring me in and let me do that. That's what allyship is.
Yeah. I think that what you said is powerful about bringing people to the table whose voices aren't accepted or even at the table. The one thing, though, I will say is I think that there's a way that people can do that as an ally, but sometimes you need to bring the person in and have them speak, but you need to say the exact same thing that they just said, because unfortunately, even though they might be there, their voices may still be muted to some individuals. And so that's a sad reality that we live in. So as an ally, understanding that as well and trying to do a good job of following up what that person said, who is being marginalized or muted for their experiences aren't being heard. I think that's important. But, I think the one great thing that you said is to bring you into the room, because some people will hear it, some people will get it. And then hopefully you'll get it even more, because just because I'm an ally doesn't mean I'm the best spokesperson for X, Y, or Z. I believe in X, Y, and Z. I support X, Y, and Z, but I can't talk to you about the exhaustive list of issues that are in that category, and so, yeah, I think that's important. So we have some great questions. I think we're only going to have time to ask 2 of them. So Gio will make a commitment, I'm assuming, to yes, eventually go back in and answer your questions directly. But the first question, which I think we were talking about Black in the Black Lives Matter movement, there being some resistance to include trans voices. But this question from Jules says, what is your assessment of your white counterparts, white trans and white LGBTQ plus individuals who aren't recognizing their own inequalities and basically who aren't supportive of Blacks or Black Lives Matter? So what is your response to that?
You know, I am not at all surprised by their behavior. None of that surprises me. And so it just further shows, I think this was a perfect time for all of these things to happen, in the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of all of us having to reevaluate life and prides being canceled. There are a lot of mad white people who are in the community, a lot of mad white gay men and white trans and queer individuals, about prides being canceled and about Black Lives Matter, and not even seeing the correlation between the two, not even seeing the connecting factor. And on one hand, I'm relishing in their ignorance, because I'm like, this is exactly what we have been saying. But it also lends an opportunity to be more of a teacher, of an educator to these individuals, to say, hey, you know, you celebrate Pride every single year. Pride started as a riot by Black and brown trans women. So learn your history, and that's the thing with that. So teaching those individuals why our existence is important, and while doing that, uplifting these young Black and brown trans and queer youth to say, hey, guess what? We don't want to pit each other against each other, but if you see that they are not representing us and they are not talking about us, then you have to be the next generation who holds this torch. And so that is what their silence has taught me.
Wow. Wow, thank you. So I tell people all the time that racism and the racial dominance doesn't stop in marginalized groups. And so usually when you hear about LGBT issues, you usually don't hear the T, you definitely don't hear the B. And the L, even though it's first, it's not always first. And so you usually hear white gay male perspectives ringing louder over all other perspectives within this marginalized group. And so that is a real thing. And so I'm glad that you brought that out. And so as we have reached our time, I just want to end with one last question. There's 3 other questions that I can see that are in the chat. So Gio will go back and ask them. But this question I think is very interesting. I want to do on video. It says, what do you fear the most as a Black man and as a trans man, or both?
Death, I guess. And I've never feared death, but in a time like now, I fear it, because every time I leave my house and step out of my door, I have to be worried about if I'm going to walk back in that door. That is something that I have to think about. And I had this conversation with my mom the other day, and it's important because, you know, when things happen in the world, if it doesn't happen close to home, so many people don't care. But, you know, when Ahmaud Arbery was murdered, that was something that hit even deeper for me, aside from all of the other Black men that are murdered. But I am an avid runner. I run every single day, sometimes twice a day. And for me to have to then feel like that one thing that brings me so much joy in this life, I cannot do anymore, is terrifying, and it's terrible. And so as a Black man, I have to be worried every single day, whether I'm going to have rights, because we know, you know, like there are so many people that are trying to roll back civil rights. And as a Black trans man, I also have to worry about if I have rights. Ohio is a state that has 0 statewide protections for LGBTQ individuals. So if you did not know that, you know that now, which is why we have to pass the Ohio Fairness Act. But I have to worry about when I travel, so I can't travel anywhere because do they have rights for LGBTQ people? Or is it an area where they're super racist and I'm going to be the only black man there? And I have these thoughts because my wife is white. So I am in an interracial marriage. And so places where my wife can go freely, I don't have that same access. And so I have to think about it in every single part of my life, always. I have to be worried about if I'm going to be safe. And so death are the thing the most. And as being trans is only another layer on that.
Wow. Thank you very much. Thank you. So Gio, thank you very much for the question, for being here, for being our guest, for answering the questions, and being willing to go back, answer the other question. There is one question in there that I really want you to think about and put as many resources in, and it's about organizations, Black trans organizations that you know of, that you vetted, that people can donate to and support. I think that that's a really good question. So put those hyperlinks in there so that people can do what you just suggested.
Yes. Well, before we conclude, I'll just throw a few out there. Trans Justice Funding Project, they're amazing. Obviously, Meta, which is my organization, so metacenterinc.org. Also, you can find me on Facebook, Meta Center Inc. The Transgender District, which I said Arya Saeed, she started that with a few other individuals. So those are just some right there that are amazing. A woman who is not Black, but she's brown, Ruby Corrado, Miss Ruby, she runs Casa de Ruby in DC, but she, takes care of and uplifts Black and brown transgender individuals, especially Black and women. So and we know more often than not, brown individuals are seen as Black for some people. So that is just as important. So, those organizations are some that please, please, please research, support, donate, and pull information from. But yeah, it's always easier sometimes to say it also. So people, when they're playing it back, they can hear it if they don't get a chance to read it.
Right. Thank you very much for that. Everybody, thank you for watching out there. We've had some great questions come through, but then also we just had some people who tuned in just to listen to Black trans voice and Black trans man's voice, and to be able to just hear that perspective is important. So I thank everyone who tuned in. Gio, thank you for being here, and everyone out there. We are in, our season of Perspectives with Black Men. We have about 6 remaining episodes. We have 4 open slots in August and September, and then we'll take a hiatus for a month or so before we come back for our second season, which we'll talk about later. But I want to share with you that we have 3 individuals coming up in the next coming weeks. We have Dr. Jesse Grant coming on next week that we'll talk about. There we have Askia Talib Dean coming on to talk about his experience being formerly incarcerated and how he's used education to defy odds. And he'll give you some more information about that, but then also tell you the struggles, even being someone who has a master's degree in the PhD program, and some of the struggles that he still faces because of his incarceration. I'm really excited about that conversation. And then we want to talk about about being creative and being and showing your Black creativity with Ben Moten on whatever date that is, August 16th. And then we have 4 open slots after that. So if you know a Black man whose perspective you want to showcase and you want to make sure that we hear, feel free to inbox me or to send me an email, njakbar@icloud.com. We want to hear their voices. We want to make sure that we highlight Black male voices as much as possible, because we are not all the same. We have different perspectives, different passions, and we want to hear them all. Again, Black perspectives with Black men is all about hearing our voices, our experiences, and our solutions. And with that, I also want to end with, we just got an IRB approval for our study that has been sparked from this platform. And I'm really excited to tell you about that this week. We will be releasing the link for you to complete. If you're a Black male or Black female, you just need to be Black between the ages of 18 and infinity. As long as you're alive and you're an adult, 18 years old, we want to hear your perspectives on racism and race, and specifically what solutions and innovations can our nation implement to help change some of these inequalities that exist in society. So we want to hear your voices through that survey. It'll take about 10 minutes to do. I'll do another Insights in 5 specifically on the survey. The data is released this week, but I'm really excited about it. And I want to shout out my co-PIs, Dr. Liz Piat and Dr. Anthony Ferguson, for working with me on that research. And with that being said, thank you again, Gio. Thank you all those who are watching. And if in the words of my favorite vlogger / YouTube star, Tabitha Brown, have a nice day. And if you're not going to have a nice day, don't go around messing up somebody else's. So thank you very much and have a great evening.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.